adding you, Cath. Okay, you have to send me the request again. All right, so yes, and my profession is women's health. Here she is.
Hi.
Hi, Cath, how are you?
Yes, I followed the instructions
Yes,
and I'm in.
well done. You've done awesome. So I was just introducing myself. So I'm talking about my profession. So my profession is a women's health movement coach, and yeah, and the nutrition counselor. Okay. And of course, the founder of this platform. And so where I get to talk to amazing, guests like yourself. So yeah, okay. And I'm going to read your bio, this amazing bio.
Okay,
All right.
you
So, all
go
right.
ahead.
So, Cath is, hi there, the deep dive AU. We're going to wave at you. All right. Thank you for being here. If you guys can hear me, please give me a thumbs up. Give us a thumbs up. And then, yeah, we're continuing with the Cath's bio. Okay, so Cath is a champion of the neurodiversity movement. She brings a unique perspective as a neurodivergent speech pathologist and former engineer based in Melbourne, Australia. So Cath started Spoons Advocacy as a platform to promote the neurodiversity movement. She has already written educational materials, including a Neurodiversity Affirming Practice, an introduction for Speech Pathology Australia, and appeared on the podcast Speak Up. Cath provides education to individuals, parents, teachers, allied health professionals, and workplaces about the value of neurodiversity. By understanding neurodivergent brains from a positive perspective, neurodivergent people can be accommodated and included in classrooms and workplaces. What an amazing work you're doing, Cath. And I'm very new to the autism and ADHD on this neurodivergent side. So please correct me if I say something or,
Oh, it's fine. Like, I think a lot of people are so worried about saying the wrong thing. So,
Yes,
and that's great. You've given me permission. So I'll say, oh, we tend to call it this or that, or
yes,
these are the terms we use
yeah,
without any judgment,
yes.
because everyone's
So,
so worried about getting it wrong. And
yes, so because our goal is to bring the awareness and
Mhm.
spread the message around the neurodivergent, right? So,
Exactly. Yeah, that's what
yeah.
we want to. Yeah.
Yeah. So before we start the conversation, I really wanted to say that this live is all about bringing awareness in
Mhm.
neurodivergent community and not a specific diagnostic for anybody. So if you need support, you have to reach out to your practitioner or, they can connect with you, right?
Uh,
They can
well,
connect with,
yeah, I mean, I think a lot of the problem is a lot of practitioners or health professionals also don't know much about neurodiversity affirming practice.
Mhm.
This is very new to a lot
Yes.
of professions. So in speech pathology, for example, it's in our formal guidelines, but how to do neurodiversity affirming practice is still very, very new.
Yes.
There's not a huge amount of evidence for the neuroaffirming strategies because it is very new.
Yes.
Um, so even like I was saying to you when we were offline earlier, like going to a GP to get a diagnosis for autism, for example, can be hard because someone will say, oh, you've got a job and you're married and whatever.
Mm.
Oh, you can't possibly be autistic. People still hold those ideas, even
Yes.
professionals do. So I think get onto your community of other autistic, ADHD, whatever you suspect you might have, get onto the communities and social media
Yes.
and follow people. And then you might be able to relate to it and decide and work out for yourself
Yeah.
whether or not what autism is for you and whether you relate to some of these people and some of the things that they're saying, and then you can go from there. And then you can find the right clinicians to support you. But everyone's like, oh, these particular doctors, psychologists, Romeo's joined us too. So say hello, Rome's.
Oh, hello. Oh,
He's
beautiful.
just had his dental treatment.
Oh, yes.
So it is, yeah, definitely get clinicians' perspectives, but we're talking about sort of the lived experience and a lot of the, this whole concept of neurodiversity comes from autistic scholars and autistic community from back in the 80s and 90s. So it goes back a really long way. And it's only become a sort of hot topic, and this word neurodiversity, neurodivergence being thrown around.
Yeah. Hi, Emily. Welcome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I will talk to autism specifically today, because that's what we advertise, but I will discuss, if you like, I can start with what neurodiversity is.
We are talking on what is neurodiversity and as opposed to autism.
Right. Yes. Very good question. People think, oh, neurodiversity. Neurodiversity is not a diagnosis. Okay. So neurodiversity, that term coined in the sort of 90s by autistic people, actually just means, it's like the word biodiversity. In biodiversity, we have all sorts of different species, trees and insects and plants, and all of that makes up the beautiful ecosystems that we live in. Neurodiversity just means that everyone on this planet has a different brain, a unique perspective. We are all neurodiverse, but we are not all neurodivergent. Divergent, meaning my brain works in a way that's a little bit different from the majority.
Yours.
Yeah. So neurodivergent, we're actually even now getting away from neurodivergent, meaning a list of diagnoses. Neurodivergent, it would be kind of, you have autism and ADHD and dyslexia and dysgraphia and acquired brain injury. And there's a whole lot of things, any kind of difference in the brain that's really a disability because of that difference in a brain. But we're even moving away from that and realizing things like ADHD and autism are almost the same thing. They're highly genetically and biologically interrelated. But you can just be very much expressing ADHD. That's me. So I'm ADHD, autistic and ADHD, but I'm very ADHD. ADHD affects my life more than my autism. But there's plenty of people the other way around. And it's most common if you're autistic, you're also ADHD. So we're realizing that, for example, neurodivergent can be, my exec function works really differently. It's much harder for me to plan things and organize ahead. It may mean that I have really high anxiety, which is also a huge crossover with autism, and I'm very sensitive in ways, not just sensitivity to, things like whether someone likes me or not, but it's also like my ears hear things louder than other people hear them. My dopamine regulation, so ADHD means that if I'm bored, I can't do any tasks in front of me, but if I'm interested in something and passionate, I can focus for hours. So ADHD is a terrible title for that. I might find it hard not everyone's wired to read easily. Some people don't acquire phonemes and how they go together. We call that dyslexia. We call all these things disorders, but they're just brains that work differently. So autism is one type of way of being neurodivergent, and there are many, many others. So neurodivergent is not autistic, and people combine them, but autistic is autistic. Neurodivergent is more of an umbrella term, and neurodiverse is everyone. Neurodiversity means you and me and not Romeo, all human brains.
Because it's the used term for, the disorder. That's why as soon as we said neurodiversity, and I was like, that is what in my mind. But then now you explained it. Now it's like, oh my God, it's so true that we all different in like every way, right? And why shouldn't our brain function should be different as well?
That's right. And then when we get to neurodiversity movement, and where that leads to is we're talking about, so I'll pick you up on one little thing you said, what the disorder is. We don't think of any of these things as disorders, all right? Now, before you go, hang on, there's some terrible disadvantages to some of these things. We do think that they are disabilities, and there's a really big difference that people don't understand between the word disorder. I mean, there is something wrong with your brain that someone has made a judgment call on, and that's where the science gets really skewed, because there's brains that work differently, but at what point do you call that brain wrong and this brain right and this brain bad and this brain good? We think all brains are good. I don't care what disability someone has. All brains are valid and allowed to be in this world and have the need to have the best possible quality of life, whatever that brain brings to the world, right? I don't care what it is. Then disability is experienced very differently by each person. So some people are very disabled and need have a lot of needs because of their neurodivergent differences. Some autistic people actually will say, I don't feel disabled by this. I'm not disabled. And for most people, it fluctuates and it depends on the environment you're in.
Yeah.
So I'm a happy autistic kid, but when I go to school, people bully me. Then now I'm disabled by that. I'm disabled often by the environment as well as what's going on in my head. So I go into this footy game because I love footy, but it's so loud because my ears are hearing things at twice the volume and without a differential between background and foreground noise. That could be because of my sensitive hearing.
Yes.
That's just one example of a sensitivity difference. So therefore, it's overwhelming and it hurts my ears. And there's kids at school whose ears are hurting and they let them hurt just so not to look different and by wearing headphones. So, you know, things disable me. I'm not necessarily intrinsically, there's nothing wrong with, if you look at, I look at every client as there's nothing wrong with this person. How do we change their environment for the highest possible quality of life? And that's the start point that none of us are taught at uni. We all start with the disorder and the ICF model and this and that. We're using the social model of disability. I'm okay, but my environment disables me.
Yes.
And not only there's physical things that disable me too. Like, for example, I'm ADHD. I'll forget my keys even in the best possible circumstances. So it's not entirely socially, but for a lot of autistic people, the social environment that we're in is the biggest disability. And for a lot of kids at, say, mainstream schools, it is incredibly disabling just to simply go to mainstream school. So these are the things we have to understand. And also, seeing someone as disordered does them no favors, even if you really believe that. And like I say, the science is making a judgment here. What brain is good, what brain is bad. Science shouldn't have judgment, right? It should be like, okay, my brain's autistic, but it's fine. It's valid. And it's got some challenges, but also some great advantages for some people.
So, is that why you are so, you know, you are advocating for the, you know, you speak at schools and you are, you know, you're interested to give a speech and things like that, and for the practitioners as well as parents, and not for the person who are labeled as a disorder,
neurodivergent.
not
That's
them,
right.
but the
people
school,
around.
or they,
It's
amazing.
the environments we go into. And this is the same for physical disabilities, right? I want to go to a meeting, but I can't walk. But once I'm given a wheelchair and once that building has a ramp, my disability decreases. So what do we do to decrease the experience of disability for an autistic person? Could it be the lights, the sounds, the acceptance, the stop seeing me as a disordered person in the first place? The diagnostic process and the medical model of autism in itself does damage to autistic people. Autistic people have their own definition of autism that goes way beyond the DSM manual. The DSM manual is kind of this definition of autism. They call it ASD. We don't call it ASD. We say autism, autistic. And autism is we just see it as a difference, another equally valid way of thinking and being. But until people understand that, we are very disabled by that because we're misunderstood and going into environments it's genuinely unsafe in some schools and workplaces to be yourself as an unmasked autistic person.
Because I remember a few years back, it was very disturbing. You know, we all get so carried on by in a social that there's the kid in China. So it was the content was written as a autistic child, and he was tied and he was banging his head on the wall, and the wall, you know, it's making hole. He's making hole on the wall, and in my head, that, you know, the autism person is how they should look like. You know what I mean? Because
and that's obviously there's someone who's being highly traumatized. So some of this behavior, like, you know, the big tantrums and the meltdowns and the banging head and so on, is just extreme distress at the environment. And it's amazing once we work with people and change that environment, how all of that can go away. An autistic person doesn't have to have meltdowns at all. Happy autistic people are very hard for neurotypicals to differentiate because they're not used to them being happy and social and, you know, a lot of homeschooled communities of autistic kids are thriving. They're confident. They'll go up to people and, so it's just really interesting people's perceptions of autism.
And because I was listening to a podcast, Mel Robbins, Mel Robbins was saying that, how women specifically, we are so good at hiding our
Yeah.
situation and
Masking.
things like that, masking. So it's we were talking earlier that, the practitioners might say, oh, you are not, you are, you have a job, you have everything, you are like, amazing, you're doing amazing in society. And then, and no, it was very interesting when Mel Robbins was saying
Yeah.
that she is in the, I think along that word that she
Masking.
said, she is,
Yeah.
so she is on that spectrum as well. So
Yeah.
it was very interesting. Yeah. So
Yeah.
anyway, and then
Yeah. No,
yeah,
happy to talk more to masking if you like, because
yeah, let's
masking is
do it.
very much
Yes.
a double-edged sword. So people who get really good at masking, right from a young age, you might be sort of watching other people, realizing that kind of the way that you are being yourself is not rewarding. People aren't nice. People aren't nice.
Yes.
Little kids, it's been studied that little neurotypical kids ignore autistic kids from a very young age. They just ignore them. They just don't play
It's
with them.
easier. It's easier to
Well,
ignore them
they
than
don't
dealing with them.
seem to really notice them. And autistic kids get along and tend to play with each other really, really well. So this is what when they're in a happy and relaxed environment, I have to say, if they're distressed, like in mainstream schools, they can be too distressed to find friendships. So we talk about high masking is something that some people, not everyone can do masking. It is a double-edged sword. It is a privilege because you can hide your autism and then get through in a neurotypical job, day after day, masking autism, and even coming across in a way that really works for people, that people feel really comfortable with. But you spend all your energy trying to make others feel comfortable. You spend all of your energy, not being yourself. And this has a very, very high cost. What's really important for autistic people is to be allowed to be autistic and to feel safe to do that.
Yes.
Because as soon as you unmask and become maybe a little less friendly and a little bit more yourself, is just gets rid of all that, the exhaustion. A lot of high masking autistic people like get by in their job really well and really crash and burn at home, just come home and sit on a couch.
I was
I've done.
reading lots of study saying that, how they, autism people, ADHD, how they have to mask and then they drain their feel, because they have to pretend all day, every day for who they are not, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
so we, in regards to that, so how can we, as a general public, how can we start accepting those people without seeing as a disabled, like yourself, living with it?
Yeah.
So, and as a speech pathologist, what would you suggest on that regard?
Yeah, for everyone else. Look, I think it's really good to just stop. Autistic people haven't got much visibility and representation that's broadly public. So I think if you wanted a tip, I guess, for like if someone in your workplace, to how to give them accommodations and how to is just make yourself a really safe person. So if someone says to you, "Oh, by the way, I'm autistic," so okay, so what can I do to help? Or just nothing. Don't be like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Autistic. A lot of autistic people are really scared to tell anyone because you might have got along with a colleague for 20 years. And then I've literally heard people say this. We got along. We had a great relationship at work. I came out as autistic and they haven't talked to me since. So it's really, really unsafe because of people's stigmas and ideas. Like, this is the same person that you knew yesterday and last week. You got to get that. I think the stigmatizing is massive. And so just be like, okay, so what, and look, okay, you're autistic. Cool. Whatevs. Right. But then
so
also,
how can we support?
Is there anything that if you just let me know anything that you need, like if there's anything that you're having challenges with, let me help you out.
Yeah.
So if you're a boss or something like that, because every autistic person is going to have different needs, or it might be more flexible working arrangements. It might be just to be able to be unmasked, some education to the rest of staff going, can we just make this a really safe environment? So a lot of engineering companies and I just happen to know a lot about engineering because that's the industry I'm from.
That's your background.
They're doing a lot of stuff in this space, because there are a lot of autistic people in all kinds of industries, in acting and creative arts, as well as engineering. It sounds like a stereotype, but there are a lot of autistic people where I used to work. And nowadays we'll do things like, if you're having a job interview, you know, you can turn your screen off. You don't have to perform in the interview, because we just want to know that you can do this job.
Yes.
We don't need you to be, you know, being able to talk about yourself and sell it the way that, you know, it shouldn't be a matter of what you do in the interview. Can you do this job? Can you solve these puzzles? Can you help us do our thing? We don't really care if you not, you know, doing the interview like a, you know, that sort of self-selling can be really hard for some autistic people. They're incredibly tend to be more honest and you know, just really forthright, and that kind of bigging myself up kind of thing might not work for everyone. So what can we do in meetings? Do you have your screen off, dial in on Zoom, work from home more, like whatever you need to not be so exhausted? And open plan offices, just don't have them.
Just having the open conversation around
what do you
know, how
need? Everybody is different.
So what do you need, and how
you
can we
need?
support?
And just don't make it a big deal, because it's really not.
So,
Autistic people are everywhere in every profession.
So, another thing I wanted to ask, as you know, yourself neurodivergent, I wanted to ask, how are you going with your hormonal situation?
Oh, this is good fun. So, so autism and menopause is a huge, huge thing. So not just autism, but I would say definitely ADHD as well. I'm not so sure about all the neurotypes, but so the same with puberty. It can be a lot of things that I guess are those autistic differences, sensitivities to things, or whether if ADHD is sort of brain fog and not remembering things, and feeling a bit scatty and not being able to focus, just get 10 times worse in menopause. It's just a really, really tough time. And you've got to remember that a lot of the time, if you've got autistic teenagers and they're going through puberty and mum's going through menopause at the same time, this is some of the really hardest times in an autistic family's life. And at the same time, if the kid's being bullied and mum's going to have to advocate at school, you can't just let your kid go to school. You have to be constantly vigilant, talking to teachers, making sure there's accommodations. This is a very, very difficult time when you're already battling, odds are against you, because people have stigmas and you know, if you come across as a quite blunt speaking, worried mum, a lot of them get that thrown in their face, saying, oh, you're a crazy person, you've got mental health issues. That the number of mums I see who are just worried mums, just getting told that they're crazy because they're trying to advocate for their kids at school. It's shocking. Like, people just see you as a bit different, a bit crazy, and then off you go. Okay, Romeo, don't go up there, darling, because you're gonna. Yeah, no, he's had his. Hello. He's just still a bit under anaesthetic from his dental treatment yesterday.
Dental treatment.
So that's definitely a difficult time. There's few other things that autistic women tend to experience that are really common co-occurring differences with autism. One is called Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, EDS. That is kind of, for a lot of people who are ballerinas and gymnasts, a little bit of EDS can be kind of help you be very, very flexible, but it can go very far the other way. You can get very sort of loose skin, joint disability, to the point of needing, you know, wheelchairs, or and again, these things are fluctuating. There's something else called POTS, POTS, which is postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome. I had to write that down because I always forget it. It's basically, it can affect the nervous system regarding heart rate and blood pressure. So people with POTS, whether they know it or not, may feel really dizzy or faint, and their whole body can really crash just from being upright for too long. So that's something that people may not have diagnosed alongside autism. And then there's migraines. So I experienced migraines that sort of started alongside menopause, and it can be really after working too hard. So you sort of lose the ability to mask for days and days on end that you can kind of keep up when you're younger. More things crash and burn, and then burnout, which is just, it looks like depression, and you'll get misdiagnosed as someone who's depressed, but it just feels like I can't go on anymore. I need a day off work, or many days off work, because I'm just I've got nothing left in the tank. And we're very susceptible to burnout because in jobs, masking all the time is just exhausting.
Yes.
So the safest workplace to be is where someone can be unmasked, be themselves, and communicate in an autistic way, which I can also talk about, which might look a little bit different to neurotypical communication, and accept it and don't judge it.
There are lots of, now there are lots of talking around the menopause and perimenopause. And so we should raise a voice towards the, how we can accommodate as we are bringing the change on that area, and how can we accept the neurodivergent people as well, So,
Well, if you're women, a lot of women obviously have menopausal symptoms that can be very, very draining and affect their lives. It's sort of like for neurotypical women, I'd say that gives you an experience of ADHD.
Yes.
Right. So if you're already ADHD and people talk about the brain fog and the forgetting things and then physical symptoms, fatigue. Okay. So that could be ADHD anyway. Right. And then when you have menopause, you just have menopause times 10. So things like hormonal replacement therapy can be supportive, but really making sure, because I think, if you're experiencing these things more than other people, you can get really gaslit by health professionals who are like, oh, come on, it's not that bad, or, I know all these other women who can do it. You may just be really completely debilitated by menopause.
Yeah. So there are lots of practitioners these days who are being very supportive and vocal around it. So
it's getting better.
Really grateful for that.
Yes. Yeah,
absolutely.
And even the fact that some of those hormone replacement have now come onto the was it the PBS? Is it called this is not my area, but it's a government funded, co-funded medication now, which I just found out, which is good.
So So now we could talk about it for ages, but
we could. I did warn you. I could go on about these topics all day.
I know it's not enough. Half an hour is not enough, right?
It's not. Yeah.
So I just wanted to quickly ask the future of autistic community. Right? What does it look like? What does it hold? Are you seeing any changes? Is there any study going on? All those things in a very short.
Very short. Okay, so first of all, the Neurodiversity Movement is run and led by autistic people.
Yes.
And so even people who are considered autism experts don't know as much about autism as, we do. I've been working with autism experts and supporting them in their learning about autism, right? Because they know the DSM, they know what to look for, but they don't know so much of what it feels like to be autistic. So with this word neurodiversity comes a whole movement that sits behind it, which is just getting autistic people to actually be represented, to be able to talk about their experience, to be able to educate health clinicians. If you learn about autism from a neurotypical person who's studied it, you don't know anything about autism, right? But there are autistic psychologists who what's the word I'm after, who actually diagnose autism. So they know autism and they diagnose it, So we look to health professionals who are experts on autism and who are autistic. Anyone who's neurotypical talking about autism, just grain of salt, unless they've really done their homework and got to know the community and the thousands and billions of different viewpoints within that community, because it's not like autistic people are all on this same page. This neurodiversity movement comes from a variety, 30 years worth of autistic lived experience information. And it is a community, and there's memes and there's spoon theory and things that come from that community. Things like rejection sensitive dysphoria, which is probably not medically recognized, but it's a huge problem for autistic people when you're too afraid of rejection to actually get employed or talk to people and this sort of stuff. Learn about the double empathy theory, especially if you're a speech pathologist or involved in any kind of teaching, helping autistic people with social communication. Autistic people don't lack social skills. They speak and communicate in different ways. There's info dumping and there's a sort of roller coaster conversations and a bit of movie quoting, and this is the way we talk to each other. And then when I'm masking, I'll talk to neurotypicals in quite a different way than I talk to my semi-autistic friends. We code switch between them. So as an autistic speech pathologist, I'm probably more useful at helping autistic people because I'll explain the neurotypicals and what they're doing with their small talk and their turn taking. But I won't make my clients do that. I'll say, that's what they're doing. Now you know that. You can choose to mask or you can choose to remain being yourself and navigate that in your own way. I just give information. I don't
Yes.
force anyone to make eye contact or take turns in a conversation or go up to other kids and introduce themselves. That's not what we do to help
Yeah.
autistic people make friends
Yeah,
anymore.
that is the best way to create that safe space, giving them power to themselves, to how they want to live
Absolutely.
their life, right?
Yeah.
So
And
that,
this is what we've learned. Like, what autistic people tell us they wish they'd known is what we do now. I wish I'd known I was autistic, why I'm different, the fact that I'm different, that this is not how other people feel, but this is how my people feel. And autistic people find tribes, and a lot of autistic women are very, very tight community, and it's beautiful friendship. So, and in our own way.
yes.
So this is the thing that, and a lot of autistic people will make quality over quantity really good close friends, and you know, who last a long time. Those things are really beautiful parts of our community as well. But we often have a lot of trauma from not fitting in, a rejection that affects those interactions and continues to affect ability to make friends and find those relationships going forward. So that's what we've got to change. We've got to change a lot of things, but it's got to be autistic led. Nothing about us without us is the safest
more
way to
study,
go.
more double empathy. When you
Double
say
empathy
double
theory.
empathy,
Yeah,
yes,
double
I
empathy
love
theory.
that.
Look it up.
Double
Look it up.
empathy.
Yep.
Yes.
But and there's also tons of research led by autistic people by autistic people. It's all out there. Most of it's for the last few years, but this stuff has been around for many years. It's just very much been ignored by the mainstream, you know, health clinician teaching courses. But that's starting to change. Psychology has to do neuroaffirming practice starting this year. Speech pathology is already doing it. And in South Australia, there have been huge changes because they have a ministry for autism. They have autistic, highly trained people in neuroaffirming practice planted in every primary school. So they are going way ahead of us in the rest of Australia.
Awesome. That's great to
So
hear.
there are changes coming.
Yes, that's amazing. So if anyone has question, please pop your question down in a comment section. And so while we wait, Cath, let us know where people can find you.
So I'm a speech pathologist, a practicing speech pathologist. I don't, but I also have a website and a business called Spoons Advocacy. So spoons that you eat out of, which is an autistic terminology around energy batteries. How many spoons do you have? I'm out of spoons. That's what we say.
I didn't know. I was like, why is Cath saying Spoons Advocacy?
You haven't come across spoons.
Thank you
so,
for
So if you work with autistic clients, get your head around some of the autistic terminology and things from our community, because a lot of the clients that you'll have will start to be really on top of this as well, and that will demand neurodiversity affirming practice, or practice that is completely not seeing autism as a disorder. So my website, Spoons Advocacy, I do public speaking, I do education to workplace, do a lot around schools and teaching teachers and principals and welfare departments about equity and inclusion, how to help autistic kids make friends without teaching them social skills, neurotypical social skills, which ultimately doesn't help anyone make friends, because you've got to be yourself to have a friendship, and to health professionals. So I do consultancy with speech pathologists and other allied health professionals, and I'm happy to help anyone else, pediatricians, GPs, psychologists, understand autism.
Kate, she's a nutritionist. So this has been great. Thank you from an autistic nutritionist.
She's autistic,
amazing,
so she gets it.
Kate.
And that's, nutrition is a whole other area, because we have so many issues with textures and food and flavour and diet and eating disorders and all of that. That's another day, another conversation.
Kate and I can collaborate in the nutrition and the on that side. I think autistic side. That's
beautiful.
Awesome. Kate, I will get in touch with you, and thank you so much for being here today. We truly appreciate you and the amount of knowledge and in this short time that I learned.
Try to get in there as much as I can.
I'm so far behind learning about the neurodiversity, but I learned diversity is every one of us. Right?
Good.
Every one of us.
Not many people have even got that far. People throw it around, say, I'm a neuroaffirming therapist. You ask them a couple of questions and realize They don't know any of this. And they call it's a buzzword. They're using the buzzword, and it's really unsafe, because if you say a neurodiversity affirming and an autistic person comes there, they have a certain set of expectations
Yes.
that this is going to be a really safe place. So you're not going to use terms like ASD, which is DSM medical model based, that sort of stuff. You got to know this stuff, you know, to make people
Yeah.
feel safe. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you,
All right.
Kat, for
Awesome.
being here.
Thank you for
Yeah,
having
thank
me.
you
Sorry,
everyone for being
so
here
much more.
and, you know, supporting Kath and myself in this talk. And we are looking forward to seeing you, you know, again in future. Kath, thank you
Absolutely.
so much.
Happy to drop by.
Yes, thank you. You have a great
You
day,
too.
everyone.
Okay.
Bye.